Welcome back to the Business Book Challenge. My name is Maria Medina. I am your business and networking coach. Today, we are going to be discussing The 50th Law by Cent and Robert Greene. I have a special guest I'd like to introduce. Please go ahead and introduce yourself, Philip.
Hello, everyone. My name is Philip Gail. I'm the owner of Gail Force Training, and it's a operation that is concerned primarily with doing workshops and facilitations for individuals to large corporations, dealing with self-esteem, personal communications, interpersonal communications, goal setting, and goal alignment. And I am also a certified master coach.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here today. I think this book really speaks to what you do. Thank you for recommending it again for this video series. It talks all about how to overcome fear to achieve success. If you guys want to check that out, make sure that you go to the blog where you can get the full summary of the book. But right now, we're going to engage in a little bit more of an interactive discussion so that you guys can get a little bit more value out of it. So, Philip, I wanted to start with a question about that self-reliant aspect that the book talks about, and often that is easier said than done. People really suffer with self-sabotage and limiting beliefs, and it stops them from whether it is that fear of success or that fear of failure. It stops them from achieving what they want to achieve. What are some practical tools that people out there can use in order to become a little bit more self-reliant?
Well, being self-reliant initially starts with your mindset. That is the way to tackle the fear, is realize that it exists. And so from that point on, you can begin the process of actually becoming more self-reliant. And so one of the things that you want to do is perhaps write down all the negative beliefs you have as to why you think you can't do a certain thing in whatever area of life it may be. And once you actually write it down, it becomes more concrete. It becomes a thing as opposed to just that negative self talk that's repeating over and over and over in your brain. If you're telling yourself, I can't do this or I'm not good enough, you're already out of the situation because as Henry Ford said, if you think you can or if you think you can't, you're right. So the first thing you need to do is to stop that limiting belief, write down the negative things that pop into your head, and immediately once you write them down, say to yourself or think of a time in your past where you've said, well, that wasn't true in this instance, and that wasn't true in this instance, and that lets you know that even in your past, you've actually overcome whatever limiting belief that was, because at the time you thought X and you conquered X. So that means that what I was thinking wasn't unconquerable in the first place. It just takes some determination. So you counter each one of those negative beliefs that you had with something you actually did in your past to overcome the exact same thing. And another thing that you can do is basically do the affirmations, do a self affirmation every morning and every evening, do it in the mirror, do whatever it takes. I do an affirmation every morning in the mirror. If anybody wants it, they can just contact me on my website. I will send you one. I'm a Ziglar certified legacy trainer and instructor. And one of the things that Zig Ziglar taught was that if you start doing that every day, what you begin to do is you counteract that negative mindset, that negative script you've got running constantly in your head.
I think that does require a lot of mindfulness and self awareness to be able to pull those thoughts and then analyze them critically, because often we limit ourselves by what we're thinking. How would you combat past successes? Because I just recently discussed another book whereby, and you mentioned this here, you said, you have a limiting belief, but then you think back, actually, I've accomplished something similarly, and that's not going to stop me this time because it didn't stop me last time. But often past successes can hinder our future successes because we often can become a little bit too overconfident, or too overcommitted to things that are no longer serving us. And a perfect example, we've been through it before, was BlackBerry. He had huge success when he first launched BlackBerry, and he had a huge motivation to continue to produce that. And he was very attached to the product, but that success stopped him from pivoting. How can people analyze their thoughts a little bit more in depth and think, okay, yes, this is where I want to go? What's going to get me there? What steps do I have to take? And is this actually going to serve me in the end, so that I have that shift mentality?
Well, one of the great things about that, and it's in the book with Robert Greene and 50 Cent, they said always look at your successes as a temporary stepping stone. I wanted to get to here. But one of the things you have to do when you set goals is immediately, once you see that you're coming close to achieving that big goal, you immediately start to formulate what the next goal should be. So if it's a technological advance, it was, oh, well, I see this might be on the horizon, or if it's whatever your field of endeavor is, I always encourage my clients to stay abreast of the latest things going on in whatever field they have, whatever field they're in, so that join the professional association, things of that nature, so that they can have their ears out, their eyes open, so for any new trends that may be coming on, good, bad, indifferent, or sideways, then they aren't completely caught by surprise. And so they can say, I'm going to celebrate this success. I did it. Now, what do we do next? What's next on the horizon in terms of my industry or my life or my physical goals or my goals with my family? Oh, we took the vacation to Hawaii. Where do we go next? It's sort of like that. When people plan a vacation, they say, "This is great. You've made it to Hawaii. Next year, we're going to do a cruise to Alaska and look at icebergs." It's the exact same concept, only people tend to separate those things they silo their activities when in effect they aren't siloed at all. And the more you integrate them, the better your life is going to be overall.
I like that you mentioned the holiday, because that's actually something my wife does very often. While we're on a holiday, she starts planning the next one. And I often, business owners forget to do that, right? And that makes complete sense. As you're achieving a goal, think, and what's next? Like, what do I want to achieve after I achieve this? And I guess that gives you that little bit of momentum, because you know, hey, this isn't the end. Once I achieve this, I've got somewhere else to go. The book speaks really well on analyzing your beliefs, but also analyzing those harsh realities. And I know that a lot of people struggle with having those harsh realities and saying, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough time. And they use it as an excuse for progress, they use it as an excuse that hinders their success. How can people start envisioning or sort of looking at those harsh realities a little bit different, how 50 Cent did with his harsh realities, to not hinder them, but allow them to succeed in spite of?
Well, I think a lot of that challenge comes from the fact that people don't know themselves to begin with. My favorite quote from the book, and I use it with my coaching clients, I use it all the time, is the greatest fear that people have is the fear of being themselves. And what that basically means is people are afraid to actually take the time to sit down and to discover who they are. Because once they actually sit down and discover who they are and do an honest evaluation of their strengths and their weaknesses, then they can understand where they're going to go. My tagline for my company is you can get there from here, but you have to know, first of all, where you are right now. It's critical. And I think that's one of the problems that everyone suffers from is because they don't want to take the time to do that critical evaluation because people tend to either give themselves too much credit or not to give themselves enough credit. One of the ways you can do that is to find an honest broker, such as a life coach or your partner, and your partner will tell you the truth. And that may be a hard truth if you say to them, or if you talk to your boss. and say, boss, I really would like to be better. What are some of the areas where you think I could improve? And your boss will tell you out of cycle of your quote unquote official evaluation, because what you're saying is, I'm coming to you as an individual. I'm coming to you as a person. I'm not coming to you as an employee or a direct report. What I'm coming to you for is honest feedback so that as a person can grow. But see, the key of that is if you ask for that honest feedback, this is in the book, you have to be prepared for what's coming at you. So if somebody says, "Oh, your grammar is absolutely atrocious. You write the worst emails I have ever seen in my life," then you have to just take it and go, "Thank you very much." You can't get defensive when you're asking for honest feedback. All you can do is take it in. And if it resonates with you that it is honest, it is true, then you just have to take it. If you really think about it and you don't believe it's valid, then you lay it to the side. But viscerally, you will know when people are telling you the truth because then they really want to help you.
We actually went through that in a book earlier in the series, which was Mindset, the Psychology of Success, where you have to implement a growth mindset. And I think Dare to Lead as well touches upon this, whereby you need to understand where that criticism is coming from. Is it coming from somebody that's actually trying to help you and help you improve and become a better person? Or is it somebody that's trying to bring you down? Once you identify that, and the person that you're asking is somebody that you can confide in and you know that they're going to try to help you, then that's when you can make that decision as to whether, hey, is this a skill I can invest in? And I'd like to go back to what you said, whereby people have a hard time admitting who they really are, because that really resonated with me in the sense that a lot of people start saying, oh, I should be able to do this, I should care about that, or I should be able to achieve this. And they get stuck in that mentality. And then when they get feedback or when they get further information, they start to try to improve skills that are sometimes out of their control. Is there a way that people can start to, besides that, being mindful and analytical, identify the skills that they can work on? Because often you get this with employers where they hire somebody and then they try to fit them to a role where their skills aren't a match to that role, and they try to mold this employee, and the employee isn't made to complete those tasks. Whereas if you focus on their skills that are actually a strength, is there some sort of like strength finder? How do you analyze that feedback so that you know, hey, this is actually something I can work on?
I was going to actually mention Strength Finder as a tool to actually, I have that book, actually as a tool to help identify something that the employee could possibly do. Now, one of the things that you could do as a supervisor and or a direct report is, once again, that's where honesty in that relationship is critical, because if the boss tells you, I want you to do X, and you say, boss, I understand you want me to do X. I really don't feel that's a strong suit for me at this moment, but I am more than willing to go ahead and give it my best shot. I'm going to give it an honest effort. That being said, within our department, within our sphere of influence, I would really prefer to do X because I excel at it. However, whatever you want me to do, I'm going to do it to the best of my ability, as long as you understand I don't have that level of expertise that you're looking for right now, but I'll give it my best shot. Most employers would rather have somebody with a lower skill level with a great growth set mindset rather than having a technical expert with a lousy attitude, because people, one person with a bad attitude can bring down a whole division. However, one person with a positive attitude can conversely bring it up just by being there with their particular enthusiasm. So, what I would say is, if you have that honest conversation, do the best you can. In the book, 50 Cent says, if you've got a job, it's really hard, you don't like it, it's boring, whatever, Realize that he said, do not make it dead time. There is something you can learn in every situation. If somebody's paying you to do it, that means there had to be some value at one time. So learn the best you can. It may not be the job, your ideal job or your ideal position, but think of it as a bridge position to get where you want to go in whatever realm of life that may be.
As you were talking about employers taking advantage of that with employees, that famous quote by Bill Gates came to mind where he said, "If you want something done efficiently, hire a lazy person because they're going to figure out the fastest way to do it." So it's often using people for their strengths, but that communication is a very important factor. And I wanted to touch upon that communication where 50 Cent and Robert Greene talk about taking advantage of opportunities. So being opportunistic and looking at those opportunities and seeing them as ways to proceed with your success, to carry on with that success. It's easier said than done when it comes to your own business, where you have ownership of that business and everything you do has an impact. And I know a lot of employees that work for larger companies often struggle with that ownership aspect or that communication where they don't feel comfortable enough to go up and approach their company, their boss, and say, "Hey, I'm seeing this opportunity. I'm seeing an opportunity for innovation, for higher sales, for whatever it might be." How can people that are working for employers start building that culture within their company? And how can employers encourage that culture within their companies?
Oh, that particular concept is called the innovation clout matrix. And so your clout within any organization will increase as your expertise increases. If you do your job really, really well, you will get the reputation for being a subject matter expert. The more credibility you have in those fields through joining those professional organizations I spoke about before, affinity groups, whatever, you increase your clout within the organization. Volunteering for jobs within your profession that someone else may not want to, or to volunteer for something. All of those things tend to increase your clout. And by virtue of that, when you get your clout increased, your influence increases, and therefore you can work on the innovation piece because you've had this idea. And when you go to your boss or you and say, boss, I have an idea for XYZ, when you go to your boss, go with a fully fleshed out plan. If you go with a concept, you're just being like everybody else. That's almost the same as thinking about it around and around in your head. That is the reason why I suggest to people they write things down. When you put it on paper, it becomes real. And so if you walk into your boss with, I've got a concept, but if you walk into her and you say, boss, I've got a concept about project process X, I've noticed Y, I think I have a way to do it a little better or smoother. I've taken the liberty of writing these down on my own time because I'm just really concerned about this, and this is our company. And one of the things you can do to increase your ability to actually implement those innovations is to take ownership, to say, this is our department, as opposed to, I worked for IBM. This is our department, so I want us to look good in front of the big bosses. So that way you're bringing your boss in and making them part of the team, and you're making it a collaborative effort. All of those things go a long way to help you in terms of increasing your clout, your influence, and your ability to innovate. Now, your part two of your question was, how can we go ahead and do that as an organization? One of the easiest ways, because prior to this, I was in the federal government for a long time. And so one of the things to do is we did on the spot rewards for somebody that did something really great or came up with something. Another thing that we did was you gave them actual bonuses at the end of the quarter for something they did that was outstanding. And you gave them credit for it. You brought them in front of everyone so that they could get that recognition that you deserve. Another thing you can do as a leader is share credit. Oftentimes, some lower level or some entry level person will come up with a fantastic idea, and unfortunately, management takes it, runs with it, and calls it their own. One of the ways to increase innovation is to give credit where credit is due, fully incorporate and believe in the team concept. That way, when someone else sees someone getting recognition, then you have just given them, that other person, permission to pursue that as well. Another, finally, a way to do innovation is just carve out time in the organization and say, we are going to authorize everybody in the organization 1 hour a week to work on whatever project you want to that you believe will contribute to the welfare of the organization writ large.
Some excellent points right there, and they directly connect to some of the books that we've already analyzed, which include So Good They Can't Ignore You, about building that expertise so that you can be seen as the subject matter and not be ignored when you come up with an idea. Then we had the five dysfunctions of a team, whereby a team loses its credibility if people start stealing ideas or they don't feel comfortable enough to steal those ideas. And as well, the book Dare to Lead speaks a lot about allowing for that space for trust and communication. Let me bring it full circle now, that the book talks about coming to these opportunities with, and I like that they said fearless, but I don't like the word fearless in a sense. I like to say bravery isn't the absence of fearless, because I don't believe in people being truly fearless, but it's succeeding in spite of that fear. When people are trying to achieve their goals, and it is a long track sometimes, they often underestimate how long certain things are going to take. And they start again that over analysis, that fear of, hey, maybe I was wrong, this isn't actually going to work. What are some things that they can do in order to overcome those fears as their goals are coming to fruition, but maybe not as fast as they would have thought?
Well, if I may, uh, in terms of the word fearless, fearless connotates just going for it, just doing it. And that is the mindset that he's trying to cultivate by saying, and I think the last chapter, when he talks about sublime, is part of that, where he says, we're going to die. You have a finite amount of time to get whatever it is done you want to get done. And unfortunately, a lot of people are too busy on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, etc., watching other people supposedly live their lives and living the life, but they're not doing it themselves. And so, as a result of that, they're stuck in one place. I think when he says fearless, what he was talking about was the fact that once he got shot, he had no fear. In other words, he said, my time is limited. I have to do what I have to do. And I think that's where the fearlessness comes in. And if you read throughout the book, that's the part that drives you, and it drove him, and he even drives you as an individual to say, yes, I've got to do this. And so a lot of what he said comes from that particular part. Now, what was the second part of the conversation? I just wanted to get the fearless part down, because I that's what appeals to most people, is the fact that he did that. And that's the reason why he did the TV shows, he did the record label. I realized actually when I read the book that 50 Cent actually published the book. It was his publishing company. He owns Casper Beds. He sold vitamin water for millions of dollars. He has his hands in everything. And I think that's what he's saying is, go for it. You only get one life. This is not the rehearsal. go for it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that definitely, and I understand where he's coming from with the. But I also was thinking while I was reading the book, not everybody has, and it sounds so wrong when I say it, but everybody has that privilege of experiencing that near death experience to sort of bring you to that way of thinking. The second portion of the question was all about how do people overcome that impatience or those doubts when their goals are taking a little bit longer than anticipated to achieve?
Well, one of the reasons he said basically in the book, there are no shortcuts to mastery. There are no shortcuts. There ain't no free lunch. You've got to do the work. And it goes back to what we were saying. If you've got a job and you think it's boring and you believe you should be the boss, you should have been the boss last year, all of that just goes to show you have to have patience. Anything that requires mastery requires time. And in our society, we want it in 30 seconds or 15 or 20 seconds. If you're a fan of Malcolm Gladwell, in the book Outliers, they say it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at anything, and they talk about the Beatles and all of that sort of good thing. So what you need to do is realize if it's worth having, it's going to take some time. Now, we talked about successes. That's where you have those milestones. If I want to be a concert pianist, that means it's going to take me a while. Now, there's going to be milestones in there. Well, I work my way to Carnegie Hall. However, you need to understand that and be realistic. One of the things he talks about in the book is being aware of your environment and the realities of the situation you're in. So once you realize this may take a while, but it will be worth it at the end. And I think that's the key. You need to keep telling yourself it's going to be worth it at the end. Use visualization to help you get there. Use your affirmations every day to get you there. I put note cards on the mirror in my bathroom to remind me of things to motivate me. Whatever it takes, a vision board is an excellent way to keep the vision in front of you. I've got one on the back door of my office. All of those things serve to keep reinforcing that process because it is a process. So what you need to tell yourself, even before you get to that point, you need to say, is this what I really want? And that's got to be key. It has to be something you want viscerally. It can't be your spouse told you this, your doctor told you this, oh, I should do this. It has to be something you really want if it's going to take a long time.
Thank you. Thank you, Philip, so much for those insights and for joining us today, as well as recommending the book, because this was one of your book recommendations. If anybody would like to carry on the conversation or ask you any additional questions, how should they reach out to you?
They can reach out to me on my website at gailforcetraining.com. And also, I'm on LinkedIn, Philip B. Gail under LinkedIn.
Got it. Hopefully, everybody will connect with you and ask additional questions and carry on the conversation because that's what this video series is for. Thanks again for joining us today, and I hope you guys join us next week.